Alright guys, this is a very quick run through of the quote calculator that we currently use for doing our managed services agreements. The first intro page is very self-explanatory, which is just the name of the company, the length of the contract, so we look to do a 36-month contract, the type of contract, which is a managed services fixed fee, and the number of users that are currently using a computer. So Stockman General Contractors is the example that I'm going to be using. Number of users there is currently 40. The labor rates, now I've actually changed this spreadsheet a little bit in terms of the rates. Our junior rates are set to 135, but the intermediate and upwards, which is actually our systems engineers, project engineers, and senior engineers, as well as the consultants, I have changed this to $150 each and changed the out of hours to $187.50 to reflect our latest rates. You are welcome to change this to $150 each as well. I know that Priscilla wanted to standardize everything on $150 and to have our senior consultants at $187. Once again, if you're going to do that, just change these two. And the after hours is a 25% increase on that, so you would work out what 25% more on $187.50 is, and then put those down into the after hours rates into here. For this example, I will leave this page as it is, but that is what the labor rates are, and based on what you choose and the level that you will choose from the drop downs, these are the rates that will apply. The next part of it is really around the initial setup and the baseline project that is required to onboard the customer. So this is all of the activities from pre-sales that we carry out all the way to onboarding that is captured here. So if we go through some of these things really quickly, network assessment mapping means we generally send out a pre-sales tech to be able to go out and do a quick network assessment. This is a single site and all of the computers were in the same building and around the same location, so it only took us 2 hours to be able to achieve that. The workflow with workflow interviews with stakeholders, this is generally carried out by a senior consultant or even the salesperson, so put them down as a senior consultant. And this is generally talking to the stakeholders about what their pain points are, how they carry out some of their activities at their workplace so far, and how they use their systems. Just takes around about an hour and a half per person and stakeholder. So if you're looking at 2 or 3 people, multiply that by about an hour and a half. In this case, we only have one stakeholder, which is Don, and therefore it's only an hour and a half. The next one is to deploy LabTech on customer network. This also used to say in Central. I've changed that. Once again, I'll send this new spreadsheet around. So this is the LabTech agents that we need to install on servers as well as workstations, and that generally takes about 4 hours for the 40 computers in this case there's a bunch of servers in the back end as well. This next one is to configure the LabTech for the customer, which includes patching, and this is the back-end configuration of LabTech to be able to put them into locations, as well as apply some of our automated templates as well as the patching windows. And that generally takes about an hour. Upfront training for Lancom systems. Now I've changed this to senior consultant because this is carried out by one of the CSMs to generally introduce them into the Lancom button, as well as all of the other systems that we have and requires training. Identification of essential data, so it's important that we understand where their critical data sits, and generally this takes an hour for us to be able to do that. The next part is the documentation of the line of business, how to install it, what are the common issues that are with it, and whom to escalate things to. That needs to be documented in IT Glue, and that generally takes about 2 hours for us because we need to be able to understand that because it's critical to their business. Identification of server warranties. Once you've got the LabTech agents in there, we use Warranty Master, but that still takes half an hour for us to be able to do that, and then to provide it to one of the CSMs if for whatever reason the servers are outside of warranty or something along those lines. Onboarding, so it's important that we capture onboarding in here as well, because we want that to be part of the activity. If we're giving away onboarding for free, try and add those hours into here so that it can be calculated into our overall managed services, and then therefore they pay for it, but as part of their managed services every month over 36 months, and we've captured the amount of hours that have gone into it. So I have had a quick look at how long it took us to onboard this customer, and back in 2017 it took us 20.5 hours, so I will put in 20.5 hours. Great. Then the next thing is to analyze backup and DR and set up backup radar. Now that gets done as part of the onboarding sometimes, so therefore we will leave this as a 0. But if we didn't want to capture the onboarding activity in here, this is one of the most critical things that we do. So we do need to be able to put in some hours into here to make sure that they have a good backup. This sometimes happens at a pre-sales network assessment mapping stage as well. That's why it's a separate line item, because we find that customers aren't properly backed up and we need to go and do some remediation work straight away. And as part of some goodwill and winning the business, we might do that for them. But at the same time, we can put it into here and then we can actually claw back for that. Tidy up security, so there's a little bit of domain reset and admin password resets from older providers, as well as locking out older providers in firewalls and changes and all sorts of things like that. Once again, this gets captured within the onboarding activity, but if you're not putting that in here, just make sure that we capture some of those things in here as well. So I will take this out because it's been captured elsewhere. Number of network probe licenses, so this is the number of licenses, LabTech agents that will be installed on the workstations and the servers. So in this case, I believe it's 45, because there was 40 workstations and 5 servers. Workgroup licenses, you don't really need to do anything here because it's all calculated for. So if we were to have a look at the total project and setup costs, it will calculate this based on the labor levels and the rates that we've set for those, and whether if it's in business hours or outside of hours, and it'll calculate those costs. So what we believe is that so once you total all of this up, we reckon it's going to cost us about $14,500 in project costs and setup costs to be able to bring this customer across. Alright, so this next one is the $18,500, which is if we were to purchase the probe licenses, it kind of calculates us to go and say, well, if you needed 50 more, here is what it would cost. So it would cost us another $4,000. We generally look to ignore this because we don't really need to purchase any more licenses. It's normally there as part of it. Alright, and then 36 months deferred setup price. If we were to look at monthly remainder of the initial project pricing at the end of the 36 months, if they were to be deferred, it's going to be $500, but we can kind of ignore that as well. Alright, so next part is tools. The top part of here is just leave that as it is, because we don't really need to change that, and we don't really use these numbers a lot anymore. This used to be when the old model was we had to go and purchase agents to be able to deploy them. We would capture that cost in here. But the service management tools are important, so these days if you're using Office 365, email and spam filtering is already included, so we take that out. But price per node of a LabTech agent, we still capture that here, which is about 80 cents for us. And then ESET antivirus, if we were to put that in, it's about $1.20 for us as well. So it's important that we capture those in here. Alright, and then the next part is really around the support labor that's required, so the workloads that we're looking after. If they have Office 365 or Exchange Online, we still put down one Exchange server onto here, because it is, even though it's a cloud workload, it is still considered an Exchange server, and it requires some sort of intermediate labor skills to be able to troubleshoot that and to configure it. So it's important we look at that, and this is then worked out as to what the predictable maintenance might be, and these are checklisted services that are set up in the back end. The reactive maintenance might be, and then the emergency downtime might require. So these are kind of pre-calculated back-end figures, and they'll be worked out based on the labor skill that's required. So these are standard metrics, so we don't really need to change all of those a lot more unless we wanted to kind of go in and override them. But I suggest we don't. We just leave it as it is, and these are kind of the metrics that we have been using. The next part is, if they have a file and print server, they have a firewall and router. Knowledge workers, it's 40 of those, so there's 40 workstations. So there is a difference between knowledge workers and information workers. You will see that knowledge workers generally require a little bit more remote business hours reactive maintenance because they are power users, quote unquote. And then if we look down here, information workers, which are not power users, we have a less reactive and half that number into there, as well as the emergency services that are required is also halved in there as well. But we believe it takes about the predictable maintenance is the same, so patching, etc. So that is how those two are determined between knowledge workers and information workers. So if you have a bunch of thin clients, use information workstations. If you have super duper users that are using laptops and workstations and all sorts of other things, then use knowledge workstations. You can also go as far as changing this to, so if you have CAD users, for example, you might require a different labor skill, so you can rename this to knowledge workers CAD, and there might be 10 of those users, and change that to an intermediate because that requires a little bit more skill in terms of supporting those, and split out those guys. Terminal server, there is one terminal server, so that once again it's an intermediate workload. And then down here, on-site backup solution. So it says on-site backup solution, but it really should be a backup solution. It doesn't matter if it's on-site or not, it still requires management. And generally, once it's all set up, we just need somebody to be able to check it and make sure that the backup's up and running and remediate any kind of issues that they might have. So a junior labor skill is perfectly fine. SQL Server, they have a backend SQL Server for their Workbench software, and this is appropriately tagged as that as well. And then if there are any other servers that you want to be able to put into here, you can also put those into here as well. Alright, so once we have classified that and the number of servers and etc. that you might have, you go into other labor. Now the other labor is actually the general labor that is required during monthly meetings, CIO meetings, the amount of admin for billing, the amount of time it takes us to be able to get some reports together, etc. So there's some general administration hours that you can look at, so time to admin this account, tools, etc. So if we were to look at Warranty Master, if we were to look at ESETs, Virus Console, and a bunch of other things, just to be able to do some admin hours for this particular customer, where you can define how many hours that is. Report generation and analysis. Now this might be for the CSM to go and create the report. And then the consulting hours, which is basically the monthly CIO meeting. So this is a very small customer, but at the end of the day, you can change these figures to however you require. So we reckon it takes about an hour's worth of admin time, half an hour's worth of report generation, and an hour's worth of consulting time. Down here, you can have an incident-based hours if you really wanted to have a look at this. So sometimes some of our customers come across from an incident-based agreement, which is that they go and say, we have had 100 incidents in the past 3 to 4 months on average, and you can sometimes send you the number of hours that they might have spent on that. And so we can have a look at that and capture that here as well, to go and say, well, if we were using similar number of incident-based hours for help desk, what would that look like? And then we'd be able to capture some of those costs We don't generally use that all that much because we believe that our managed offering, our incident-based hours should naturally go down as we go across with standardization, etc. Haas and warranty tabs are no longer used, so ignore those. So once we put in all of those things, it gives us a nice little summary here, which tells us on a monthly basis how much on-site business hours do we predict, how much remote support do we predict, how many on-site after hours would we predict, and how much remote after hours would we predict for this customer. So this is only a prediction at the end of the day, and it's a best high quality guess, as I would put it, but it is the only way we can determine what those costs are currently to a certain degree of accuracy. Obviously, after 90 days, we can go and have a look at this, and if these are going through the roof, then obviously have a conversation with the customer about it. But for now, we would be able to, run through this and see what's going on. So it also breaks it down into little bits and pieces, and then breaks it down into the quantities of the servers that are supported and the workloads that are supported, and how we've got our emergency budget, as well as our number of total hours that are required per device as well. So that's pretty much a basic summary. Just allows us to have a look at if there are any outliers and crazy numbers that we might have typed in here as I don't know, instead of putting in 40 workstations, we might have made a typo and put in 400, and that will come across here. So the next part is really the pricing, and this is just around how we try and get our overall contract margin. So the ideal overall contract margin is somewhere between 55 to 65%. If we can try and keep it at 65%, that's fantastic. If it's a competitive kind of scenario, we should try and get down to about 55%. If you're looking at going lower than 55%, I would suggest that you have a conversation with Priscilla or myself in terms of why we're looking to reduce that margin. Is it because we're getting a lot more project work that's going to come through that's going to bump this up? Is it a marquee customer? Is it some sort of reason why we would be looking at diluting our margins, which might be propped up by a bunch of other things to begin with? So it's important that we kind of get a little bit of a picture as to why we're trying to go below 55, and then we can go from there. So in this case, we use what's called a price override scenario. So from this drop down here, so we put in a price override. So if we were to achieve 55% over here, so the part that we are interested in is the overall contract margin, which is currently set at 54% down here. And then this is a discount kind of method. So if we were to look at 3,450 per month, for example, that'll give us 55.3. 3,400 will give us 54.6. So 3,450 is an ideal minimum kind of marker here in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So the way it's calculated is that the margin on tools, so we can ignore that particular line because currently we don't capture all of our tools costs, including the agents costs and the upfront investment that's gone into buying lab tech and the rest of it. That's why it's showing a negative figure here at the moment. The margin on labor, so we would like to be able to sit at the 55% mark on labor, but if you have a look at our overall services margin as well, there's 47.5%, and it tells you, if you go over here, how that's calculated. And then we just look at the overall contract margin, which is services plus labor plus tools, and then we end up with this 55%. So this has generally been quite a good indicator of where we should get to in terms of pricing our agreements. But there's always been cases where in MSP CFO we've seen that there's the margins have been a lot lower, and then we're able to go and analyze that and seeing how we're able to have a conversation with the customer, and they might have grown, they might have not have disclosed the system to us when we were actually onboarding the customer, or they are quite immature in the way that they actually do their work, and therefore they're very reactive even though we're trying to be strategic, and as a result we can have those conversations. So I hope that's given you a good overview of what's required, and that's how we capture the numbers that are required to price a managed services agreement. See you later, bye.